Hi everyone. Today I'm continuing on with my discussions of the films of 1972, a year-long series. This month I'm focusing on horror films, and today I want to discuss What Have You Done to Solange, directed by Massimo Dallamano. This is an Italian Giallo. I'm not very expert in Giallo movies. All I know is about half a dozen of Dario Argento movies, and I've recently covered a Mario Bava movie about last week, and Baron Blood, also from 1972. So I'm still trying to figure out the enduring appeal of the Giallo. Certainly, it has I'm of the murder, mystery, horror, gruesomeness of it, but. I'm detecting a kind of consistent vibe to it that because these are all B movies, and the producer of Solange, admits, we were making B movies. These weren't the A movies of Italian cinema. But it's sort of like the film noir of the late 40s and early 50s, where you could watch the B movies and the C movies today and still find a great deal to interest you, because they also had a very specific vibe in that era, that especially that black and white initial era of what's come to be known as film noir. And Solange is a schoolgirls in peril movie, and this was the first of what became a trilogy of schoolgirls in peril in London. This is a Giallo set in London at a very posh finishing school, and whose students are starting to be murdered, but with no motive, no discernible motive. And the film opens with a teacher from that school, played by Fabio Testi, and he's on a boat with what appears to be a much younger woman. It turns out to be a student at this school. He's trying to seduce her. She's somewhat reluctant, and as the seduction scene goes on, they're close to the shore of a river. Through the bushes, she believes she has seen a murder. But of course, they can't get involved because that would be the end of his teaching career. So they have to keep it quiet. And Fabio Testi's wife, the teacher's wife, played by Karen Ball, a German actress, she's already on to his infidelities, and she's a very interesting character, because she is in the beginning her makeup and her hairdo very severe, but then as the movie goes on and they sort of reconnect as a couple, her hair becomes a lot looser, makeup. And the girl in the boat, the student played by Cristina Galbo, she is a Spanish actress, very, very beautiful and beautifully photographed. And this is like the other Giallos I've seen. This is a beautifully photographed film. It is not as flamboyant as Dario Argento or Mario Bava, but it has some very intricate camera work and really good lighting. So we have Italy, we have Germany. The police detective is a fairly famous German actor. Cristina Galbo, Spanish. This is an international cast, but even though filmed in London, I couldn't find any British actor in the movie. Even all the extras seem to be non-British. And the school where these murders are taking, this is very wealthy. This is a wealthy Catholic school. Parents are living in beautiful mansions. And the Catholicness really plays into the role, because we have this sanctity of the confession. So the priests have heard that, presumably they've heard information that would lead to the uncovering of the murderer. But even though multi-murders are occurring, the sanctity of the confession, it's sort of like in I Confess, the Alfred Hitchcock movie. And there's also And the priest, whoever is killing the murderers, is being described as by the Christina Galbo character as in a long black robe, a priest. So it could be a priest or somebody dressed as a priest. And it has an anti-abortion message to it. At least that's what I detected while I was watching it. And indeed, the producer of the film, in one of the supplements, he talks about that, and he says, yes, we were making an anti-abortion movie. And all this Catholicism really is kind of jarring with the gratuitous nudity. I mean, the nudity in here is almost all gratuitous. We have not just one, but we have two locker room shower scenes with all the girls all naked, one from their own point of view, and a scene later on from a peeping Tom's point of view. I'm sure some of these scenes, this scene was probably cut in some countries where that might not be so acceptable. And these are supposed to be teenage girls, and one of them is actually mentioned as being 16. So I did check IMDb, and all the actresses that appeared in the film were all in their early 20s. So these weren't underage girls. Is the movie scary? I can't say I was much scared. There is one scene, one murder scene, that doesn't go on very long, and I imagine that would be scary. But there are some, the discovery of the dead bodies and the method of murder is certainly gruesome enough. But for me, it was more absorbing as a whodunit. I mean, it's a pretty good whodunit. And so we have the police inspector, a police procedural, but also amateur sleuths as Fabio Testi and his wife. As they reconnect as the film goes on, they become the amateur sleuths. And the other mystery of the movie is, who the heck is Solange? She's not mentioned. And the first mention of her name, I paused the movie. It was at the 1 hour 12-minute part. So 2/3 of the film is gone before she's even mentioned, and she's the most important single figure in the movie. And then we go maybe another 10, 15 minutes before we actually see Solange. And it plays very much into the idea of what this group of girls, and some of whom are being murdered, how much do their parents know? There's a big emphasis on when the girls leave the house or leave the school, but especially when they leave the house, we focus in on the parents. What's going on with my daughter as she goes out into the real world? Like I say, this is a very well photographed movie. Massimo Dallamano was the director of photography on two Sergio Leone movies, the first two of the Dollar trilogy, before he became a director. The actual DP on this film was a real character by the name of Joe D'Amato, and he actually appears in the film too as an extra. They point in the commentary, he's pointed out as one of the police, and he would later on he would go on to be a director himself, and eventually would make. So I think he made a couple of Emmanuel movies, and then went into hardcore pornography. And Solange is played by an actress. I can't remember her first name. Her last name is Keaton, and she was a relative of Buster Keaton, and was a model. And I don't know if this is. I think this is her first film. Because when Dallamano saw her, I think she was trying to get a part in his Franco Zeffirelli movie. He saw her picture and contacted her. Dallamano thought that she would be perfect for this part. And she says, well, I've never acted before now. You can understand that. That she's very effective. She doesn't say anything in the movie, but she is very effective. So in the extras, we get a visual essay by Michael McKenzie. This is really good. And he talks specifically about Solange, the schoolgirls in peril. subgenre, and some of the other giallos of the period. I mentioned the interview with the producer. There's an interview with Fabio Testi, and these are all maybe early 2000 interviews. And Testi is handsome in his, I guess he's in his 60s, as he was in his early 30s when he made Solange. And he had just been in the Garden of Finzi Cantina with for Vittorio De Sica, which brought him attention. But this was the movie I think that is attributed as being the film that brought him into stardom. I have to mention a really unique interview with Karen Ball, who played the wife of Fabio Testi in the film. This is just hilarious. She sits in and this again, I believe the early 2000s, she sits in a restaurant in Amsterdam and she completely trashes the movie. She thought it was the stupidest movie. The screenplay was so inconsistent and so absurd. The Fabio Testi they had a film in English. Fabio Testi couldn't speak English well, and he started. She said I had to play. He just started mouthing the words because there was no sound in the filming, and it was all going to be post-dubbed. And how can you act with somebody like that? And she intimates that he's a dummy, and he had to just be pushed over. He couldn't remember lines, and there were prompts all over the place for him to read his lines. The director terrorized the girls, and especially the Solange, the actress who played Solange. And she was distraught, and she came to Karen Ball, and so what am I going to do? And because of the nudity, and well, you have to go to your parents. But again, she was living on her own in Italy. She was in her 20s. She was a model. So it's amazing. You know, in the supplements you hardly ever see. I mean, if they had, you know, some would say, well, we better not use this because most supplements, everybody's a genius in the supplements, and everybody. But it didn't ring true. And you know, like for instance, I read a little bit about Fabio Testi, and according to what I read, he is fluent in English and in English, Italian, I think Spanish. The girls, there's no evidence that the girls didn't understand what they were doing. This was 1972. Nudity, anything goes with nudity, at least in most countries. But in the commentary, there's a commentary with Kim Newton, Alan Jones, and it's hilarious too. I mean, how did Kim Newman find the time to write novels when he saw every movie ever made? You know what I mean? And Alan Jones wrote a book about Giallo, so there's lots of information. But they too, during the commentary, they point out all the narrative situations that just don't make any sense, and shots that are a little bit inconsistent. And but what does it matter? This is not Giallos. I don't think were meant to be perfect. They were to be, at least the way I understand it, they were meant to be not to have that gloss of the A film, and there's a lot of charm and real interest, sort of like the punkish, the punk rock movies compared to the glossy, high, beautifully produced movies that probably wouldn't stand for this kind of narrative incoherence. But it doesn't matter because you get the scenes that you want to see. It's colorful. So I'm getting to kind of like it, Giallos. And next up, I'm going to talk about Don't Torture a Duckling. I can't believe I'm going to watch a movie with torture in the title. Torturing a duckling. I sure hope they don't actually torture this poor duckling here, but who knows. Okay, thanks a lot for everybody who listened. I do appreciate it. Comments are welcome. Take care.